When we think of Roman houses, we tend to think of ruins, of broken walls and empty windows, and lizards skittering over sun-baked mosaic floors. There are a few Roman houses, however, that have never been ruins, and are still used for their original purpose. None of them, as we'll see, look much like the familiar mansions of Pompeii. But all have been inhabited repeatedly, and in some cases continuously, for almost 2,000 years. We'll start in the city of Rome. The monastery of San Gregorio was founded in the year 575, when its namesake, the future pope and saint Gregory, converted his family's ancestral mansion into a monastery. By the time it became a monastery, Gregory's mansion was already centuries old. It seems to have been a sprawling structure, with warrens of rooms ringing its central courtyard and grand reception halls. One of these halls likely became the current monastery church, which is pictured here. The only obviously ancient part of the church is a marble throne, reportedly used by Gregory himself. While it's impossible to know whether this is true, the throne is certainly ancient, and may have come from the original house. Another part of the house became the chapel of Sant'Andrea. The frescoes visible today date to the 17th century. But beneath them, and beneath the medieval frescoes they cover, the walls of the ancient mansion still stand. A neighboring chapel preserves an ancient Roman table made of marble, at which St. Gregory is said to have served the poor of Rome. We have no way of knowing whether this is true, but it is at least possible that this table, like the throne in the main church, once stood in Gregory's house. From Rome's shady Kylian hill, we move to sunburnt Cappadocia in central Turkey. These days, Cappadocia is a staple of travel brochures. During the Roman era, however, this bleak and windswept region was one of the most remote parts of the Mediterranean world, known, if at all, for its extreme climate and the cave houses of its inhabitants. Since long before the Romans conquered the region, the people of Cappadocia had been tunneling stables, houses, and whole subterranean cities into the formations of volcanic rock that loomed over their villages. The golden age of such building began in the late Roman period, when the first cave churches were cut into the region's spires and fairy chimneys. Although precise dating is impossible, some of Cappadocia's cave houses were certainly inhabited continuously from the Roman era to the 20th century. Many, in fact, have been renovated and now serve as upmarket hotels. For our next example, we journey to the edge of the Syrian desert. Syria has the best preserved Roman houses anywhere. During the late Roman era, a booming regional economy sparked the foundation of dozens of towns, each with its streets of sturdy stone houses. After the economy of Roman Syria broke down in the 7th century, many settlements were abandoned. The houses, some, like this example, 3 stories tall, survived the centuries remarkably well. When the regions around them began to be resettled, many of the Roman houses were in such good condition that they were simply reused. The best preserved houses of all are in the Hauran, in southern Syria, where, thanks to the absence of wood, walls, floors, and roofs were all built from thick slabs of volcanic stone. The 2 examples shown here, drawn as they appeared in the 19th century, were more or less perfectly preserved, and both inhabited. The most impressive example I could find was the imposing and perfectly preserved mansion shown in this drawing. When that drawing was made, in 1865, the mansion was inhabited by the Sheikh of Amra. Of course, a lot has happened in Syria since then. I can only hope that this fine building still exists. And now, back to Italy. Over the past few decades, the Sassi of Matera have become one of the biggest tourist attractions in southern Italy. They look like nothing else in the country, row on ragged row of weathered stone houses, built into a natural amphitheater of limestone. Although most of the masonry visible today is medieval, the cave houses behind those walls are much older. They were already ancient when the Romans arrived. Some, in fact, may have been used for thousands of years before Rome was even founded. Individual cave houses are almost impossible to date, both because the basic design changed little over the millennia, and because the caves were constantly modified. At least a few, however, have been more or less continuously occupied since the emperors reigned in Rome. Last but not least, we head to the sunny shores of the Adriatic, and to Split, a medieval town built on, in, and over a gargantuan Roman villa. That villa was the retirement home of the Emperor Diocletian. It was an immense complex, with palatial reception rooms, cavernous storehouses, gleaming marble temples, and barracks, all ringed by walls high and strong enough to defend a city. Almost as soon as emperors stopped visiting, people began to trickle into the villa from the surrounding countryside, seeking shelter from the barbarians behind its colossal walls. By the 7th century, a permanent settlement had developed. The villa's central courtyard, shown here, became the town square. Houses were built in the imperial suite. Shops crowded the vast cellars. And, in a splendid bit of irony, the mausoleum of Diocletian, arch-persecutor of the Christians, became the church. The town thrived and grew, and has become a destination for tourists, who come by the thousands every year to see this fascinating example of a Roman house that's still inhabited today. I hope you enjoyed this video. In the coming weeks, I'll be exploring more remarkable and overlooked survivals from ancient Rome, so stay tuned. If you haven't already, feel free to check out my forthcoming book, Naked Statues, Fat Gladiators, and War Elephants, which is linked in the description. And, as always, thanks for watching.